with no further ado, I'll introduce Dr. Brad Carey.
Yeah, thanks. So when I was told I was going to be asked to do a leadership lecture, Eric and I had a few discussions about the way I view leadership and kind of some of the things that are going on in my program or in Australia and what might be different or unique, or what kind of message I would want to send to students, or a message that I might have liked to have received back when I was in your shoes. So I put together a lot of stuff, and then I changed it all, and then I changed it again, and so I might not talk to my slides too much based off some of the input that I've received from some of the faculty about things I'd like, or that I should be talking about today. But hopefully what I do talk about is relevant, and it's something you can keep in mind as a lot of you are already working in industry, but as you go out into your careers. So quickly, a little bit of background about me is builder. So started out working construction when I was a little kid, picking up garbage on my dad's construction sites. He was a builder. Worked my way up to become a qualified framer. Eventually, I wanted to not be out in the winter in Seattle anymore building houses. Not sure if you guys are familiar with Seattle, but it's a pretty miserable place weather-wise. Rains about 300 days a year. So getting my way out of that was a top goal. Eventually went to Arizona, where I pursued a degree and went into the infrastructure side of construction, building wastewater treatment plants, light rail, things like that. Most recently, I've moved into oil and gas construction and mining sector, and doing a lot of consultancy through that. That's that stuff. So what I wanted to talk to you guys today is about the types of skills you need in becoming a leader. So in our program, and when we talk with our advisory board, much like you guys have an advisory board, one of the big pushes that they're putting onto us is soft skills. So you have your hard skills, and bit of background on my program is we're generic project management. So we have an undergraduate in construction management, but we have a graduate program in just project management. So we draw from engineering, IT, all different sectors. And what we do is we teach these people how to better manage projects. So they're already people who are working in industry, 5 to 10 years experience. And in that curriculum, we teach them things like estimating, scheduling, some of the technical knowledge that you need for your industry, specifications, rote knowledge, the things you have to memorize in order to be a project manager, not necessarily how to think, how to solve problems, how to interact with people. And industries come to us and they've said, we need more of that. We need more of the people that can interact with other people. The people who have leadership skills, who can communicate, who are a self-starter, they have grit, they'll see something through, they'll finish it off. Team building, problem solving, these kinds of things. And that's what they really crave, and that's what makes for a successful project manager or someone to lead projects or be a leader in industry, is those soft skills. So what you're learning right now, whether you're in architecture or you're in the interior design program or if you're in the construction management program, are predominantly hard skills related, right? You're learning how to do takeoffs, how to do design mock-ups, things like that. But it's those soft skills that are going to take you to the next level and are going to allow you to build your career. So when we talk about soft skills versus hard skills, as your career grows, there'll be a shift away from hard skills towards soft skills. So if you think about anything that computers can now do for us, computers are becoming more and more knowledgeable. You've got automation, you've got machine learning, things like that. All that hard skill stuff will most likely eventually be automated. So there'll be a computer program that takes your BIM model, delivers all the quantities, tells you exactly how much you need, orders the materials for you from the supplier, does all the work that a junior project manager or someone actually is responsible for on a construction project. That'll eventually be gone. So once that's gone, what's left? It's the leaders, the project leaders, the people who can communicate, who have the idea, who can figure out what's the business value of this next project, and the ones who can communicate that and get the people to work for them and work with them. So you can't automate those personal skills. You can't automate soft skills. So as we see a growth in technology within our industry taking over some of those roles, we have to shift our focus as educators and start putting the emphasis more on the soft skills. You know, how do you operate in teams? How do you think for yourself? How do you be a self-starter? How do you get that message out to students? And obviously, you know, you guys are sitting here, so you've done something in your life that says, you know, hey, I want to be in this industry. I want to move forward. I want to advance my career or advance my prospects. So you're already one step ahead, right? The fact that you're here. But it's, you know, taking a look at, all right, what am I learning? I'm learning these very important building blocks, these technical skills, but now I need the soft skills to add to that if I want to be successful. So one thing to keep in mind is project goals are achieved through the efforts of people, and it's assisted by the outputs of technology, right? So we're managing those outputs of technology. We're using it to help us to become better. But at the end of the day, the projects are achieved through people. So one of the guys who I do a lot of work with, he says, he thinks it's funny, but it's really not. He says, you know, project manager, PM, should be a people manager. And he always laughs, and not sure why, but it is true. You know, you are a people manager as a project manager. So that's your main goal, or your main job, is to manage those people to ensure a successful project. So PM is a profession. So this is a little bit of something that we've been putting together for our curriculum at Curtin, but any profession has an accepted body of knowledge. It has a system for certifying that individuals have mastered that body of knowledge, a commitment to the public good, and an enforceable code of ethics. Project managers have that. There's organizations that verify, you know, you've achieved certain levels of project management. The biggest one worldwide is called PMI. It's based here in the United States. It certifies people across, you know, primarily construction and engineering as project managers, but also in IT and other areas. But the reason I put this up here is the bit at the bottom. It says, thus professions are oriented towards practice and focused on client needs. Above all, professions integrate knowledge and practice. It's exactly what it is as a project manager. It's practice, right? Every project is unique. You're not going to have the same project twice. So you're practicing the whole way. It's kind of like in medicine when they say a doctor is, you know, they practice medicine. That's because they're not perfect, right? Otherwise everyone would live forever, no one would ever get sick. They're practicing. They're trying to get better. We're doing the same as project managers. We're always practicing. And what that tells me is that as we go out, we learn from each project and we take that to the next project and we try and make our practices better as we go along to ensure better outcomes. So in industries, like the industries that you guys are going into, they're project-heavy industries. So it's not an operational role when you go out into construction management or architecture. You're working on projects, right? So projects are kind of the change engine of society. So if we're trying to achieve change, we're going to undergo projects. We take projects. Construction companies, you know, obviously they build projects for profit, right, to grow their bottom line, return value to shareholders, whatever it may be. But their clients, they use those projects to drive the advancement of their organization. So if it's Southern Miss, right? If they're going to go build a building, why are they building that building? Well, so they can provide better education to their students. They can have better laboratory facilities, something like that. That contractor needs to understand the goals of that organization that is building that asset so that they can better deliver an asset to that organization. So quickly, does anyone know what the world's most valuable company is in terms of sheer dollar value? It's Apple at the moment, but yeah, them and Amazon go back and forth. Apple does projects. Apple does so many projects that they've created their own in-house project management group and project management education, because if you think about it, they have to undertake projects in order to get better. Create the new iPhone, that's a project. Create the new whatever device or streaming service it is, that's a project. So they need project managers to manage all of this. And their whole curriculum is based around soft skills in their project management. They figure it's very easy for people to get these competencies in cost management, you know, schedule management, those kinds of things. But they're really working on the people skills side of things. So when we take a look at projects, what is a project? Can anyone define that? I mean, we all know what a project is in our head, but how would you define it? Shy group, no one cares. What?
Client needs.
Client needs? So yeah, it takes that into account. Anything else? So I pulled a couple definitions. So here's one. It's a unique process to achieve an objective to specific requirements, including constraints of time, cost, and resources. Right? So we have constraints on projects. We don't have unlimited funds. We don't have, unlimited time, and we don't have unlimited resources. What's that do? Creates conflict, right? So that puts those soft skills into high demand, right? Because anytime we all come together on a project, you have subcontractors, you have suppliers, they all have different goals on the project, right? So my goals as the main contractor, let's say, that's different from my client's goals, it's different from my subcontractor's goals, and there's bound to be conflict. That's when those soft skills come into play, right? Do you have the ability to manage that organization, that temporary organization that's created around your project? Here's another definition. A project is a solution to a problem. So basically any project arises out of either a problem or an opportunity. There's a problem, let's say we have a water project where we need to deliver potable water to a city. So you build in some pipelines and things like that. You're solving a problem. The people needed water. Or it's an opportunity, you're going to go build a new gas plant offshore, an oil rig or something. Well, the opportunity is to take oil and gas to the market. So that's, another definition for project. Here's another one, temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. So projects don't always end with a tangible product. So sometimes it's a training program or something like that, implementing new training. That could be a project. Those projects require the same kind of management and the same kind of soft skills. So here's the last one I'll touch on. Endeavor in which human, material, and financial resources are organized in a novel way to undertake a unique scope of work to a given specification with constraints of cost and time to achieve beneficial change. Now I like this one because it includes beneficial change. That's why we're always doing a project, right? We want to be better than what it was before. If we don't achieve beneficial change, why are we even doing a project? Right? So we have to keep that in mind when we're going through projects. What's the beneficial change? What is the outcome? A lot of us in construction, it's just money, right? Bottom line. Money or perhaps reputation. Get that next job. So keeping that in mind as a contractor, the beneficial change, what my client's beneficial change is going to be, is very important. So if they don't achieve those benefits, probably not going to get work from them again. Right? If I allowed them to do a project that I had the technical knowledge and expertise, let's say I get it done on cost and on budget, but they don't achieve any benefit, they're not going to give me a good reputation. They're not going to, sing my praises as a contractor and say I delivered great work. Gonna skip through some of this since So projects exist as a temporary organization. So typically it's within the sponsor's organization or it's a consortium of the sponsor, the contractor, subcontractors, consultants, and suppliers. In construction, we typically fall into this consortium, right? The projects bring together people from all different organizations. And how does that look? Looks like this. You have the sponsor or the client, right? Then you have the project manager. You have your engineer, your architect, your authorities, your in-house, self-perform, whatever work you can self-perform. Then you've got all your subcontractors, subcontractor 1, subcontractor 2. When I look at this is obviously a very basic organizational chart. But what this tells me is one of the most important things I'm going to be doing as a project manager is communicating, right? I'm communicating up the chain and down the chain. I have a whole group of stakeholders there that require management. So my job is obviously, manage time and cost and schedule, that kind of a thing. But it's also to keep these people all on the same page, keep them focused on the project, keep them focused on what the intended benefits of that project are. So why do we do projects? Obviously, as I said before, we do projects to achieve the beneficial change. To do the projects, we have to have management. So we have to have project managers to manage those projects. Here's a definition for management. The art of getting things done through other people. Seeing that definition, probably confirms everything you've thought about your bosses in the past. They just do all the work. What do they actually do? Type of thing. He just sits back and relaxes while we do all the work, and then he takes all the credit, he or she. But also, here's another definition: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So now we have to take that and we have to apply that to projects if we want to be a successful project manager. So what is project management? What is going on there? must have some kind of a noise in there with the animations. There's actually, funny enough, organizations that have gone out and they've defined project management, and they're typically those organizations that provide recognized credentials. What they say is it's the planning, delegating, monitoring, and control of all aspects of the project and motivation of all those involved to achieve project objectives within time, scope, benefits, and risks. So that's Prince 2, which is a major project management methodology in Europe. And then here in the US, we have PMBOK, which is PMI. It says application of knowledge, skills, tools, techniques to project activities to meet the requirements. So obviously, those are just definitions. That doesn't tell you how you manage a project, right? It kind of gives you the ideas of what to do, but doesn't tell you exactly how to do it. That's not the recipe for managing a successful project. So what we've tried to do in the project management industry is create models for project management, where a model is just a simplification of reality. How can I provide this and show you how to better manage a project? So it explains the main characteristics of that reality. Someone's got an alarm going there. And it's an overall explanation of what occurs. So if you needed to, you could go get a resource like PMBOK. I'm sure it's here in your library. But what it'll do is it'll provide you a step-by-step recipe as a project manager for exactly what you need to do. Here's kind of what it looks like. We're not going to go through all of this. But as you look at all these activities, and this is very much simplified for a project manager, that's pretty hectic, right? And in that, you're managing and controlling people, products, outputs, inputs throughout this whole process. So while the technical skills and technical things you might find in the PMBOK, such as their 10 knowledge areas or processes, which are scope management, schedule management, cost management, quality management, resource management, communication management, procurement management, risk management, stakeholder management, and integration management. You can find step-by-step guides for this, but there's nothing in there that tells you how to do this as an individual, how to interact with the people that you're going to be interacting with, how to go about conducting yourself, and what skills will make you successful in this. So you can go read the book, and you can understand how to do it all. But there's a lot of project managers that have PMP certification, are qualified, that they know all of this knowledge, but they still can't deliver a project to achieve the benefits of the client or deliver the project along the way and have a positive experience with the other stakeholders. So what this has caused us to do is, when we're looking at leadership and project management, is say, all right, well, we know we have to do all these things on a project. We have to manage our scope, our costs, whatever it is. What are the attributes that we really need to focus on as a project manager to deliver these? So we looked at what project management attributes are. So we have the project objectives. That's what we manage as a project manager: time, scope, cost, quality. We have integration. That's managing the whole, ensuring the integration of all those elements: the time, the cost, the quality. You're doing all those elements at the same time. Managing the people, that's one of your main jobs. So projects are accomplished through people. You're leading, you're motivating, and you're communicating. Now at different times throughout the project life cycle, it's going to vary whether you're a project leader or you're a project manager. Those are two very different things, and we'll look at that in a minute as to what I mean by that. But then applying the different PM skills, knowledge, and tools. So much knowledge is unique to project management, such as critical path. I'm sure those of you who've taken planning and scheduling, is everyone familiar with what critical path analysis is? Well, that's unique to project management. Came out of engineering, moved into construction, but now it's used across all industries. But also PMs use general management theory, such as team building, negotiation, things like that. So got a question for you. Jane Doe knows nothing about IT. She's a great construction PM. Would you let her manage an IT project? Someone want to be brave? What? No? Why not? Okay, so no background whatsoever, doesn't have the technical knowledge?
She'd go out and find somebody.
Yeah. Anyone else feel otherwise? You say, oh, well, she's a great construction PM. Yeah, what do you?
Well, if she has the leadership skills to collaborate with all the teams, then she could do it if she had that experience.
Yeah.
As far as she would just have to
Yeah. Well, I agree with both of you. So you're both right. There is that element. If you're well versed as a PM and you know what you're doing, you know how to manage projects, absolutely you probably could. Does it help to have that technical background? Absolutely. That way you know you're not getting taken advantage by a subcontractor or someone who's performing a piece of negotiated scope, something like that. But if you have that capability on your team to handle that bit of it, and you can just focus on the management of the project, then you're better off, right? Because you're focusing on strictly the management of that project. As you get higher and higher in the construction process, you'll find that as a project manager on a mega project in construction, you're not dealing with any of the technical issues. That's handled way lower in the chain to the project engineers, the site superintendents, things like that. You're dealing mainly with the high-level issues, supply chain issues, contractual issues, obligations, things like that, rather than the nitty-gritty and the technical details. So on projects, we have two processes. Jeez Louise, I really need to get that stopped. It's about giving me a heart attack every time it happens.
That's to keep you awake from that working 2 hours.
Jeez. All right. So we have two processes within the project. We have project management processes, so that's non-technical, applicable to most projects, PMBOK knowledge areas, the time management, cost management, things like that. PM plan, progress reports. Then we have technical product or processes, specify and create the project's product. Varies within the industry, right? So project managers go in construction, IT, weddings, wedding event planner, that would be a project manager. They're managing, all kinds of different vendors and scope and everything. Implementing employee training programs, that could be the product of a project. Jeez. Don't know how to stop that. So when looking at PM versus technical, I'm just going to go through these, but if you go through the big consultants in project management, there's kind of two different views. One is the less the PM knows about the technical issues of the project, the better. This comes out of the IT sector. So this is borrowed directly from some Apple literature where they don't want their PMs being engineers and involved directly on the project and giving input. The reason is because that PM then puts on their technical hat and they sit there and they try and dictate and solve the technical issues at the expense of the rest of the project. But other people would say, not being sufficiently technical can be a handicap, perhaps serious, right? If you don't know the exact technical issues, you could find yourself in hot water if your team doesn't have that capability or that capacity. So why do I say this and why is this important? Well, as a PM, that's another thing you have to be able to balance, right? It's a soft skill is knowing when you need to give your input as the PM technical expert and when you need to be the project manager and stick to the managing of the project rather than getting down into the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day tasks. So a little bit of research that I stumbled across when looking at project management versus technical. So a lot of times in a lot of industries, everyone wants to be the project manager, right? No one wants to be the, person doing all the work. Everyone wants to be the PM. But when we look at the engineering industry, it's often assumed that engineers take on a PM role due to lack of interest or ability in the technical. But engineers aspiring to enter project management are often amongst the more proficient technically. Yet, the experience of those engineers who translated into project management, seen as a good career move, but the experience is opposite of the hype. PM tasks considered glorified secretary, chasing up overdue tasks, having limited authority. That's exactly the way I felt when I read this article was, as you become a project manager, you are doing more administrative work. You are chasing up late bits of work. You're harassing people. You're saying, have you done this scope? When are you going to get this to me? When can I count on you for that work? When are you going to deliver? It's not as exciting as you might think to be the boss. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Plus, they said, engineers who transition into PM, sensation of loss of professional status, because you relinquish your position as a technical specialist. This happens in construction industry as well. If you know a lot about, concrete construction, heavy civil works, you're the expert on, the means and methods for building bridges and things like that, and then you go from being the person who's, the site engineer and is, leading that scope of work to being the project manager or program manager for a group of bridge works. You're going to lose that status as the technical expert because now you're managing the project as a whole. You're dealing with contractual issues and things like that. So as we move from just project management into the project life cycle, quickly we have typical phases of a project. So for those of you who've worked in industry, this should be fairly familiar. You have at the start of a project, unwarranted enthusiasm, uncritical acceptance, agonizing delays, growing concern, utter confusion, total disaster, search for the guilty, punish the innocent, resignation of the disgusted, and promote the uninvolved. It's not exactly how projects go, but they typically do fall into some of that, right? At the start of a project, everyone's happy. It's great. We're going to achieve this. We're going to do this project. It's going to be the best project. I've never been on a project where at some point the wheels didn't start to come off, right? It always happens. It's never been the perfect project. But if we know this going into the project and we plan for it, we can avoid this by understanding that at the start of a project, everyone's excited. Perhaps we need to, as a project manager, focus on our leadership at that point more so than management and lead the project in a different direction. What do I mean by that? As we go through the project life cycle, whether the project management leads or manage changes. So, this is change. What I mean by that is at the start of the project, you need to be a leader. That's doing the right things, right? So it's getting the scope right, getting the project right, putting that work in order in the right way. As you go more into the project, it's management, right? It's doing that controlling of the project, quality control, quality assurance, that kind of a thing, and doing the things right. So at the start of the project, you have to get the thing right for your client. What is it that we're building? Getting that product right. And then as we move forward, it's then doing the management side. So at the beginning of a project, you're more of a leader. And as we go through, then you find yourself managing more. So next, we move into authority versus responsibility. Does anyone know the difference between these two? What do you think I mean by authority and responsibility? Can anyone define authority?
Be accountable. That's your responsibility.
Yeah.
Authority has the power to make a difference.
Yeah, authority, you have the power, right? You can enforce something upon someone. You have the authority to allocate resources, to allocate money towards a project. You have that authority to be able to impose some level of obedience upon people. And responsibility is you're responsible for delivering that. So authority, the right to make decisions, designated people have to follow, right to impose some degree of obedience, apply resources, sign approvals, things like that. Responsibility means you're responsible for delivering that scope of work, expected to act without specific guidance. So you're saying, all right, well, I know we started this talk talking about soft skills. So how does that play into responsibility and authority? Well, what we found in a bit of research was that project managers have two types of authority. There's formal authority. And what I mean by formal authority is the rightful power to command others to act or not act. Organizational position, policy, documents, or contract dictate this level of formal authority. But there's another level of authority, and that's called earned authority. This is what you want to strive for in your career, is earned authority. It comes as part of your technical competencies, but then the way you conduct yourself and the way you operate with people, that is how you get earned authority. And what is earned authority? It's expertise in project management, management experience, and your interpersonal skills. Rarely, as a project manager, do you have full formal authority. So you use your earned authority. If I'm on a construction project and have a bunch of subcontractors working for me, I may have on that specific project formal authority to get them to act a certain way on my job or install certain things. but that subcontractor also works for 10 other general contractors. So you're not the full authority over them in their organization, only on that temporary project, that temporary organization that you manage. So in order to get them to help you out, to work for you and work with you, you have to rely on your earned authority. Do they like you? Do they get along with you? Do they respect you? I mean, they don't have to like you, but as long as they respect you and they think you know what you're doing, then that's that earned authority. And you'll get a lot more out of people if you have that, if you develop that. So how do you get that earned authority? Being trustworthy, being honest, being responsible for items and delivering. So, and then in research, we found that PMs in a survey of project managers on oil and gas projects, so pretty high-scale projects, they believe that expertise and reputation is the most helpful source of influence on their projects, more so than contractual obligation and things like that. I'm sure some of you have heard in your work experience, you never want to have to turn to the contract, right? Ideally on a project, you don't want to have to go to the contract. That means everything's sailing smoothly. Well, how do you ensure everything's sailing smoothly? Well, you have good expertise and reputation in that regard. I'm coming up on my time limit here, so I'm going to move on into PM skills. So I talked a little bit about soft skills being what our project management advisory board wants us to incorporate into our curriculum more and developing that. So if you were a project sponsor, you're the one paying for it, you're the government, and you're going to go build a bunch of schools or something along those lines, and you need a project manager, what would be the most important skill to you?
Safety.
Safety? Right? That's pretty important. What else?
Communication.
Communication. Yep, absolutely. Any others? So we got safety and communication. So in looking at what's the most desirable skills for project managers, this can't really pronounce that. It's Holzel, I suppose, did some research and found that the role of the project management or manager in relation to project success is under-researched. But what they found was there's input competencies, so that's knowledge, skills, and qualifications and experience that a project manager has. But then there's personal competencies, the behavioral characteristics, personality, attitudes, or soft skills. And when you add those two together, you get what's called the output competencies. And that's what your project manager is able to do. So you have to have both. So what this did was it spurred a colleague of mine to just go do not very scientific research, wouldn't get published in an academic journal or anything like that, but to go out and do a little research project where they took a look at 150 job adverts in Seek.com, which it's kind of like the most popular job posting engine in Australia for jobs. And what we did was we looked locally in Perth, and we found that after a simple search for the construction and engineering sectors for project manager jobs, we did a quick content analysis for frequency of appearance, and the skills that we found was number one was communication and stakeholder management. So how is the project manager able to communicate? That's what was most desired of firms in oil and gas, construction, the engineering, project management. What do they want? They want good communicators who can manage stakeholders. Well, that's very important, right? So you should be thinking to yourself right now, all right, what do they mean by communication skills? Well, for one, it's getting the information right, but for two, it's how do you conduct yourself? Do you look people in the eye? Do you, look at your feet when you talk to them, or, not make eye contact? Do you seem unenthused? Are you on your phone when you're supposed to be conducting face-to-face with someone who's a stakeholder? It's how you go about it. So that's a soft skill, right? Very important. Next one is technical expertise. Obviously, that's a technical skill or a hard skill. So in the back, you said, no, I wouldn't hire her to do an IT project because she doesn't have the technical skill. So obviously, that's important as well, right? To have that technical background. But more so, communication and stakeholder management. I guess the theory behind that is, they're willing to sacrifice the technical for communication. Ideally, you want both. But as we go down the line, next is interpersonal communication, which is taking communication to the next level. How do you actually communicate face to face? Tertiary qualification, that's just degrees, Time management, cost management, that's soft skill. Risk management, you could say it's a hard skill or a soft skill, but it's probably more of a soft skill, how you go about managing risk. Team management, leadership. So out of those top 10, right, 5 appear to be soft skills, but in the top 2, it's related to communication, top 3, there's 2 that are related to communication and how you conduct yourself. So I'm not going to go through that since we're running out of time. But as a PM, you're responsible for delivering that one key result, and that's to ensure that the benefits are in your project are delivered. So you got to lead, communicate. Just want to get a couple other researches done that are more sophisticated than what we did by just looking at job ads. Here's one that says, PMs should have leadership, communicate at multiple levels, verbal skills, written skills, attitude, and deal with ambiguity and change. That's what makes for a successful PM, is what these Stevenson and Starkweather identified. Sean et al. Said the top 5 most important skills are leadership, effective communication, then technical expertise, team building and planning. Chapulu said that it's technical skills, then communication, team management, leadership, and degree or education. So obviously, hard skills and soft skills are both very important. If you have a mastery over the technical skills or the hard skills, and you're able to incorporate those soft skills, that's really going to get you far. So in the last little bit, I'm going to do a case study that I was involved with that to me, it kind of opened my eyes to the importance of soft skills, and it was a real concrete example of where if you don't have the right soft skills in place, a project or a program of projects can go pear-shaped. Just use an Aussieism. So pear-shaped means everything falls asleep in Australia. So if they say something went pear-shaped, it means it falls apart. So case study in PM for soft skills. So research background. There was a $375 million alliance contract. And what an alliance contract is, it's when the government partners with the contractor and the engineer, and you do kind of a pain share, gain share contracting situation. So the savings that you achieve through the alliance are passed on and shared amongst all 3 entities, both the government, the engineer or designer, and the contractor. There's 129 water infrastructure projects, 5-year timeline, and it was in regional Victoria, which is sparsely populated. So it was to deliver water to 275,000 people living regionally, kind of on farmland, things like that. What happened was 2.5 years into the 5-year program, they started delivering projects, and they were doing, the testing of the water lines and moving into the period for acceptance and things like that. They found that the projects were being delivered an average of 3 weeks late, due in large part to rework. Had already cost the sponsor, the government, who's putting forth the $375 million, over $1 million in extra costs directly related to extra management and supervision. Extrapolated over the life of the project, that was expected to be an additional $3 million. The cost borne by the project contractors was estimated to be $15 million, just in their rework costs. So there's a lot of rework happening. It's pushing these projects behind schedule. It's costing money to the alliance. The cost of rework did not vary between project types, yet the number of project or product quality non-conformance reports formally raised by the contractors and reported was 0. So we had all this rework, but there were 0 non-conformances reported. So how does that work? If things aren't conforming to specification, to standards, if we're having to do rework, surely we should have some non-conformances that are raised before we get to that point. Large number of injuries were also occurring due to rework, and I'll touch more on that in a minute. So we were brought in to do a bit of consulting work, and during the investigation, we interviewed a lot of people who were parties to these contracts. So it was with the contractor, with people working for the government, the engineer, the alliance manager, design manager, safety, quality, and environment manager, the commercial manager, site supervisors, so on and so forth. We did unstructured interviews where we just sat down with people for an hour or 2 at a time. We said, tell us what happened. Why are we experiencing these results? And we then went back and did something which is called causal mapping and causal analysis. And what we found out was that time and budget pressures caused by the adversarial environment were what was leading to this. So the owner of the project never fully got behind the whole pain share, gain share thing. They didn't want to share with the contractor. They thought, oh, the contractor and designer are trying to rip us off from the government side. So he never fully embraced this team concept. What this led to was workers were scared to raise a flag when they discovered something was wrong, particularly within the contractor's organization. They didn't want to be responsible. They didn't want to look like they didn't know what they were doing. It became cultural, and this is a major contractor, top 10 contractor in the world who's performing these works in terms of size. You know, they have all kinds of clients. Within their contracting organization, obviously it's, you know, sitting as part of this alliance, they were scared to say, oh, we have problems, you know, oh, we've made a mistake, because they didn't want to appear as though they didn't have the ability to perform the program of works because of the alliance relationships. The engineer echoed these sentiments. So if they had errors in their design drawings, things like that, they didn't want to wave a flag and say, oh yeah, hey, we have an issue over here. They didn't want to look incompetent. They didn't want to you know, appear to be the cause of the problem. So what this led to was individuals and subcontractors trying to fix things on their own. So they thought, oh, I can do this by myself. Oh, it's not that big of a problem. I don't need to, you know, alert my manager or my boss. I don't need to do that. And what that did was it just compounded things. It built and built and built. You know, the individual wasn't capable of doing it. By the time, you know, things got put in place, pipe was put in the ground, it was covered, it was buried, you know, and they'd find out, oh, we've got a leak. You know, we're not getting the pressure we need at the end of the line. Well, was it a design issue? What was it? So we're getting these issues and we're having to go in and do the rework. So, you know, that's what was going on. What happened was soft skills came into play. They decided on the government side, after we issued our report and our recommendations, the government said, you know what, we don't need this person running our program, running our alliance contract anymore. We'll move him on to another set of works. And we got a new program manager. And what he created was a rework program, a no-blame culture, to try and say, all right, if you have a problem or if you've made a mistake, alert us immediately. And what we'll do is we'll stop, we'll make sure it gets the attention it needs and the resources it needs, but also we're going to learn from this. And what they did, based off of our recommendations, was they created this. So, you know, not only were they nipping things in the bud before they became drastic problems within that culture, everyone felt comfortable doing this. They no longer felt scared for their jobs. They no longer felt like they were you know, going to be persecuted. And so they also used these NCRs, or non-conformance reports, as a learning opportunity, and shared this learning opportunity with the other subcontractors, with everyone else in the program, so that those mistakes wouldn't be made again. What they found was 50% reduction in change orders being attained after the implementation of the program. Specifically, the KPI established on completion of the projects on time achieved full compliance. Variations submitted by the contractors to the alliance were cut in half in comparison with the period before the rework initiative. And then also what we found, and this was a set of research projects that I wasn't involved with, but some of my colleagues were, was that injuries went down. So someone said safety, that's the most important thing on a job site. Well, they went, and this kicked off a whole other area of research where they went in and they found that during rework, you're 12 times more likely to get injured than you are on the first time installation. Anyone have an idea why that might be? Want to get it done fast? Yeah, what else?
Complacency.
Complacency? I've already done this before, I know what I'm doing. So I don't stop and do the same checks and same safety issues, right? I don't go through my full protocol, all my steps, look at my you know, toolbox talk, whatever it might be. I just go in and I do it because I figure I've already done it. More likely to make a mistake, more likely to get injured. You're in a hurry. So yeah, as a result, the injuries started to go back down, which was pretty significant. All this stemmed from getting someone in place who had those soft skills, who was able to say, you know, I'm going to build a team rather than rule like a dictator, make everyone scared. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, you go in and you're all touchy-feely as a project manager and you have to, you know, oh, everyone's great, this and that. But if you're the opposite, you're not going to get good results. If you're a dictator, if you're yelling and you're screaming, or you're making people scared for their jobs, you're not going to get the good result. So really that, Sean was the guy's name who came in and became the new program manager, and he was kind of this really results-driven individual, but he could also see, that we needed a cultural change, and it led to, what was going to be kind of a disastrous project, both for the contractor and the engineer, and certainly for the government because they were going to incur more costs. It was delivered on time, on budget, and there was actually some gain share shared across the entire alliance in the end. So, last bit of takeaway that I want you guys for today. Obviously, the technical skills are important. They're very important. That's why you're here. That's why you're learning. And that's what you're going to learn your first couple of years out in the field. Whether you're going to be a BIM manager, whether you're going to be an interior designer, whether you're going to be an architect, whatever it is that you're doing, that technical skill is very important. Those project management skills, there's even a technical component in that, costing, estimating, some of those core project management competencies. But the way you conduct yourself, the relationships you build, the trust you engender amongst your cohort and your colleagues, that's what's going to get you to the next level. So really, when you go out there, think about that earned authority. I'm sure you've worked with someone where you think that person knows it all. Particularly when you're a field engineer or an intern, there's always that one person who has the answer for your question, right? If you can become that and you're approachable and you're the person who people go to for answers, then you're going to do great in your career and you don't have to worry, and worry about promotions. They will come. You'll find your way. And then the last bit that I know I said the last bit a second ago, but that I'd also like to touch on is just there's so many opportunities. I said this to the group of students earlier, but in the built environment for career opportunities, there's so many opportunities. It doesn't mean that you have to go be on site when you graduate and spend all your time in a job site trailer before you get promoted. You could be a BIM manager. You can be a consultant. I've been telling people the last couple of days over and over again that the big four companies, consulting companies, KPMG, Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they're hiring construction management graduates and construction managers to go in and work in these high-profile roles, across the globe, because traditionally those are accounting firms and big business advisory firms, but their projects of works or their consulting works are consisting more and more of capital programs and capital projects, particularly as the rest of the world develops in Asia and Africa. There's all these infrastructure projects and programs that are going on, and those firms get all the consulting work. Well, they need construction managers because they're accountants, right? They need people with industry know-how to work in those organizations. So that's a career opportunity that's widely available for you that I didn't know about when I was at your position. It was never talked about. No one ever told me. All my cohort that I graduated with, we were all working in job site trailers and doing that. But there's so many opportunities, whether it's facilities management. Healthcare is another huge one that has application for the construction industry. As we advance medical technology, people are living longer and there's more need for care. There's a huge sector in construction for healthcare right now, and construction managers going into advanced stage healthcare. So, keep your mind open to some of these opportunities. It doesn't have to be, residential or commercial construction. There's tons of opportunities out there, and also opportunity to go places in your career. If you ever want to look overseas, boy, the fact that you're lucky enough to be in America and get an American qualification, you can go anywhere you want with that degree if you get your degree from here. Doesn't mean you have to go there forever, but if you ever thought, oh hey, I'd like to work in Asia for a couple of years, or oh hey, I'd like to go work in Europe for a couple of years, that degree you get from here, it's super powerful. Allows you to go there. So if that ever interests you, look, it's out there. That's it. So I suppose any questions, or anyone want to point out anything they saw, or no? Shy group? Bored? Everyone's napping? Yeah.
One thing I noticed as being a personnel manager is sometimes if a manager has too much technical knowledge, they tend to be a micromanager of the folks that they manage, and that really irritates the underlings. So that would be one thing to avoid. And then as far as problems on the site, I always tell my folks, you recognize it, you fix it, you learn from it, and move on.
Yep. What we found on that program works was the recognition bit. You know, people were too scared, and so, you know, the learn from it part is I feel like I saw it this morning. I think in your offices, you had a quote on the wall from Albert Einstein. It said, you know, what was it? Anyone who's never made a mistake has never tried anything new. So projects are always novel. It's always something new. You're going to make mistakes. So learn from those mistakes. You know, every construction company has what they call lessons learned at the end of projects. But most construction companies don't actually do it correctly, right? They take it and they do a quick, you know, write it up in a folder and put it somewhere, and no one ever looks at it again. Get everyone involved with the lessons learned. Use it as an opportunity. Bring everyone in on Friday for pizza lunch or whatever and go through the lessons learned. Make it a part of your organizational process. Even if you have to do it just as a lower level, as the project engineers, you get together with the other project engineers from your company or that are on your projects, and you sit down. You know, what went on this week? What did you learn? What did I learn? You know, oh, this worked great. And you know, lessons learned always aren't always because something went bad. It can be something good as well. So, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of the students want to be project managers.
Yep.
And you talk a lot about skills which can be learned, knowledge which you can get, I guess, through study and experience. But one of your slides had personal characteristics.
Yep.
How big of a deal do you think that is? Should students be thinking about that kind of as a self-assessment if they want to be a PM? I don't know if that's a clear question.
I would say, yeah, anytime you could take a self-inventory and look at, you know, what your strengths and weaknesses are. I mean, you know, before you go do a project as a contractor, you'll do, you know, SWOT analysis or something like that to say, you know, should we take this job, or, you know, if you're doing an organizational analysis, you'll do that. I think, you know, students should do that as well. I every now and then take a step back and say, all right, you know, Brad, what are you good at? What are your core competencies? Where do you need improvement? You know,
would you be able to, like, off the top of your head, think of personal characteristics of a project manager?
Of a project manager? Well, it's varied, right? Because every project manager has their own technique, and that's the thing, right? It's a bit of an art form. It's not an exact science. If there was an exact recipe, we could all follow it. You know, if it was an engineering class, we could all come up with the same formula and we could all do it. But yeah, some characteristics that definitely lend themselves more towards a successful PM. One is how can I frame this up? It's when I was talking about the earned authority, it's the way you conduct yourself, that you have that knowledge or expertise, that people perceive you. You conduct yourself in a way that you're perceived as being competent. I mean, obviously there's a bunch of characteristics that lead to that, but it's the way you've conducted yourself over previous jobs to do that. But doing the self-assessment, I think, is very good. It's at any point in your career to look at, you know, where you could improve and not take it negatively. Because if you have a performance review with your boss and they say, oh, you need to do this better or that better, there's a reason they're telling you that. I mean, it might feel like they're, you know, a jerk or they're out to get you or something like that. And I've certainly had jobs where I thought that about my managers. Everyone probably has. But I've also had, you know, some great feedback. Some feedback I got recently from someone higher up in the chain for me was, you say yes to everything, and you can't do that. You have to say no sometimes, because what it does is it causes you to start slipping on some of the other things you do, and you're not delivering them as well as you used to, or you're not giving them the attention that they deserve. So, you know, perhaps saying no more, or growing more of a backbone type of thing could be a characteristic or something that you need to look into, and that's one that I have to look into. So doing a self-assessment and finding out, you know, your core competencies, I would say, is good. Yeah.
There is no doubt that every single student in here is going to need to be able to utilize those soft skills that you were discussing in your presentation. I think you're spot on there. If a student maybe knows, I'm not so great at maybe public communication or some of those soft skills that they know need improvement, what would you recommend on maybe ways that they could improve those kind of tough soft skills?
Yeah, best way I know is just expose yourself to it as much as possible. Whatever you're not good at, do it till you are good. I think it's Malcolm Gladwell who said if you want to be an expert in anything, you got to give it 10,000 hours. Well, obviously you don't have to give 10,000 hours to everything. You don't have that kind of time. That's what, 5 work years. But expose yourself to it as much as possible. You know, I'm sure a lot of your teachers, when they first started teaching, were nervous, didn't want to go up in front of a class, and now you notice that they're all pretty, you know, much fairly competent. They walk in there, they talk, you know, to you like it's, you know, the average conversation, something like that. And I know public speaking is a big fear for a lot of people. You know, so that there's a lot of that. Me personally, I know one of my things is conflict. So I don't like conflict. I don't know why. I don't, you know, engage. I don't seek out conflict. And so for me, one of the things I've had to do is make sure and put myself in situations where I speak up for my staff more, you know, because perhaps we're not getting treated fairly within the university, or, you know, sticking up for my grad students when they're not getting the resourcing of someone else who has a louder voice within the university, but perhaps not as much need or doesn't deserve. So that kind of a thing is one that I work on constantly and force myself to, you know, speak up and get into more conflict type situations, because otherwise, you know, you'll just get steamrolled and everything goes right over you. But yeah, expose yourself to as much of it as possible. Anything else? Any students have anything? No, you just want to leave?
Anybody want to work in Australia?
How did you end up in Australia?
Yeah, so the Australia thing, funnily enough, it was a complete accident. I was just at a conference and I gave a presentation as part of my PhD research. I created a computer program, an algorithm that was for planning departments to sync up their right-of-way maintenance programs. So right-of-way is anything in the roadways, so roads, sewer, and water, because there was a lot of waste going on. So I'm sure you guys have seen it before, where a road will be blocked for like a year while they redo the road, and then 2 years later they go in and redo the water line underneath it and cut right through a freshly paved road. It was to try and avoid those kinds of situations, to put those 3 planning departments kind of in the same group. And the guy said, you know what, that's good research. Why don't you come to Australia? And I just jumped at the opportunity, bit his hand off, because at that time I was, you know, young and single. And, you know, but if anyone's ever interested in that kind of stuff, your university has resources to study abroad. I recommend do it. You know, it's great. Every program can do it. Even if it's going to cost you a little bit of money and you have to take a little bit out in student loans, go for it. Everyone I know, I'm jealous of everyone I knew who did it when they were in school, who went and studied abroad, because they all said it was the greatest time of their life. Everything was excellent, you know, and opportunities to work abroad are there as well. You just have to explore it. You can get visas to other countries. I mean, anyone who's a U.S. citizen can go to Australia and work for a year. You don't need any you just need to apply and you can get a year work visa. If you go with a construction management degree, you'll get employed immediately. The construction sector there is very strong. So yeah, again, like I said, that U.S. degree, it's a very powerful thing. So I mean, and if you're interested, you can get my email from Eric. If you ever want to go over, I could probably, you know, help you out, put you in contact with industry or something like that. So I'd be happy to do that. Or if you want to come get a master's degree, you can come do it, you know, at Curtin University. So, yeah.